It seems that a common opinion by the gaming community nowadays is that games now are just too similar to each other. That even if the core gameplay is entirely unique, there's just something about them that feels like you've played them before. Gamers lament the lack of originality in games with phrases such as, "Games in the past used to be so much more interesting and cool, not like this kiddie Fortnite stuff," they say with Dorito crumbs on the chin. Despite that wide reception across the gaming community, however, games with entirely unique concepts are still releasing, and on a frequent basis too. But no matter what, people can't seem to scratch that feeling that something is just off with games right now. So what's going on here? Why is there a massive disconnect between the gaming community's perception of the industry and the actual core of modern games? To understand that, we'll need to go back and take a very brief look at the beginnings of the video game industry, so we can get some context on the environment at the core of video game companies. The games industry is widely accepted to have begun in the early 1970s with the release of games like Pong and the Oregon Trail. One thing you'll notice when you look at games from this era is that they were largely created by people that came from entirely unrelated fields. Atari was founded by electrical engineers, Namco started as an amusement ride company, and Taito did all of these things before becoming a game developer. There was no guidebook or game design theory yet, just people from all walks of life doing whatever they felt was right for their game, and this created an environment of experimentation and variety in gaming, despite games running on potatoes. As the decades went on, technology became more advanced, teams became larger, and more businesses got onto the video game market. But that experimental atmosphere was still largely a mainstay of video game developers, as development time and costs stayed largely manageable. And every year it seemed that multiple genre-defining titles would be released. Game developers would riff off each other, sharing ideas and setting new standards for games on a frequent basis. Where this all started to change is up for debate, but I believe the change began in 2011 with the release of not one but 2 games. These games released within a week of each other, and their impact on the industry has been equally enormous. These games are The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim and Minecraft. Now, these are fantastic, genre-defining games in their own right, but the real issue here is how other developers perceived them. Skyrim and Minecraft blew people away with their vast open world, building and crafting mechanics, and this made these 2 games very, very successful. Skyrim and Minecraft were now the new standard for what video games could be by the general public, and as such, game developers clamoured to meet this new standard. But by 2011, the games industry was a vastly different place. Game design theory had been mostly solidified, dev team sizes had increased into the hundreds, and the next generation of consoles was only a couple of years away, meaning that things were already going to become a lot more complicated. Following game design trends was something all developers did to some extent, and although it would give you a better chance of gaining monetary success, it was by no means necessary. Good games, no matter how unique, would sell well enough to invest in them wholeheartedly, but with the very process of game development itself becoming much more costly and complicated, following trends in gaming was no longer just for the greedy, it was becoming a requirement for success. Unbeknownst to their developers, Skyrim and Minecraft had just set off the fuse that would inevitably give a death sentence to any kind of uniqueness in AAA games. As to surpass the expectations that they had set, other developers would need to resort to progressively scummier business practices to fund their games. And this, ultimately, has led us to today, with our industry being plagued by things such as live services, free-to-play models, battle royales, battle passes, open worlds tacked on for no reason, multiplayer modes tacked on for no reason. Fortnite got silly skins, we've got silly skins, with extra microtransactions too. And don't forget the UI, it looks just like the world's favourite game. We've got quirky emotes and dialogue to keep the kiddies engaged, even when the game is about the brutality of war and global warming. Intricate crafting systems, because Minecraft had it even when it's a horror game about slicing a bunch of space aliens into pieces. You heard of building? We've got building. Rebuilding society, that is. What? Minecraft? Never heard of it. Because as gaming's new corporate overlord, we are legally obligated to ensure that any resemblance to other games is entirely coincidental. Remake of the beloved classic? Yup. RPG mechanics? Got that. We're even developing a walkie-talkie action game that revolves around a parent-child bonding story. You know what they say, the analytics never lie.
But that game doesn't have a parent-child bonding story.
Then add one in!
But we can't.
The marketing team have seen the money. Do you not understand money? How else are we going to fund these games that cost hundreds of millions? The massive studios worth billions more. The literal thousands of employees across our entire company. And most importantly, my yacht.
I don't know. Super Squiggly Brothers?
Super Squiggly Brothers will not sell 10 million units. The all-seeing tick told us so. Oh, all-seeing tick. Tell us more. We need more marketing information, all-seeing tick. Give us more. Oh, yes. What have I gotten myself into?
Okay, I don't necessarily think that any of the games I mentioned are bad, but you can't deny that a lot of the decisions they made with them weren't driven by an increasing need to follow trends by AAA game devs. Does every multiplayer game need a live service, similar UI and tons of skins and emotes? God of War is still a great game with a fantastic plot, but is its parent-child bonding story really told best with this walkie-talkie style that's deliberately designed to mimic film? This is something I'd like to get into in a separate video, but to keep this video moving, it's true that games in the past used to copy other developers' homework. But the good games would always take into consideration how other developers' work would fit into their project. Take the fighting game boom after Street Fighter 2's release as an example. After Capcom released Street Fighter 2, every company, regardless of size, wanted to make a fighting game. Heavy hitters such as SNK, Namco, Sega, Lucasfilm, and even EA had a fighting game at one point. But the ones that would stand the test of time were the ones that were willing to take a risk and build off of Capcom's core ideas. Virtua Fighter and Tekken added the element of 3D movement. King of Fighters was one of the first fighting games to have team-based combat. They all did something major to adapt what Capcom had done to their unique project. It wasn't simply copying, it was taking inspiration. Wacky skins, live services and battle passes aren't the problem. It's the lack of consideration or care for how adding them in is going to affect the world they have created. And in some ways, I honestly can't blame them for lacking consideration for stuff like this, because in today's climate, they may not even be able to. Game development time is only getting longer and longer, so to make a profit from such substantially longer production cycles, more and more trends will have to be crammed into their games in order for them to succeed in the eyes of the higher-ups, even if they don't fit in. This is the reason why many recent games that have unique concepts feel so similar, is because the things that the marketing team have determined will make the game more successful are being forced onto it to make it more market viable. And they don't care how these things are implemented. They just care that they are implemented in exactly the same way everyone else has. The games are all different, but the blanket they've been wrapped in is the same. I understand why these companies are doing these things, and I genuinely believe that although corporate greed does play a major role in this, the reason why most games now are similar to each other, even if just a little similar, is because AAA game companies are built around perpetual growth and constantly pushing to do bigger things than they did before. They've forever been in the entertainment industry's biggest dick measuring contest, but eventually you just get to a point where it's impossible to grow further without making major concessions. And it's unfortunate that AAA game devs feel that making a game that's truly unique, truly unforeseen, is just not good enough anymore. AAA game developers are simply too big to succeed now, and they'll continue to follow the money for as long as possible. But at the end of the day, people want to see new shit, and AAA game developers are, for the most part, simply not the place to find truly unique games anymore. However, fear not, as there is a little glimmer of hope on the horizon, a shining beacon ready to guide us into the next generation of gaming. To allude to this, here are what I would say are the most influential games of each year in the 2000s. Feel free to get mad in the comments. Got it? Okay, here is the same kind of list, but for the 2010s. Notice the difference? The 2000s were made up of massive AAA experiences, but as the 2010s went on, more and more of the most influential games of our time were made by small, passionate, independent developers. And if you've been paying any kind of attention to the industry as of recent, you'll know that they are truly the ones leading it forward. Splitgate, Stray, Sifu, Vampire Survivors, Cult of the Lamb, Dark and Darker, all of these games have been some of the most standout titles from just the last 2 years alone, and they only have dev sizes ranging from less than 30 people to just a couple of developers in their bedrooms. Up until now, indie developers have been mostly relegated to 2D pixel art titles or other similarly cheap projects, but progressions in technology such as Unreal Engine 5, which has many systems specifically designed to streamline game development and make bigger games possible for cheaper, are a godsend for indie developers. And we've already been seeing the benefits from the technologies it has created. Indie developers are now able to create bigger and more complex worlds than they ever have before, and with a player-driven mindset, strong visions for the kind of games they want to create, and no tick-worshipping marketing executives to answer to, we are going to continue to see more and more indies take over the industry. It's almost funny how the industry seems to be going in the direction that it started in, pushed by small teams who are just looking to do what's right for their game. So yeah, AAA games are dead, indie games are the future. Remember to support indie developers whenever you can, because you never know when they're going to push the medium forward again. I'm sorry if this video seemed a bit more rambly than my other ones. I'm just passionate about this topic. Go watch my other videos for more focused content. I don't really know how to end this video now. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe!